What's nerdier than making Pokemon teams for ACOTAR characters? If you have an answer for this, you can posit the answer, but I can also tell you what the answer is, and it is making magic cards for ACOTAR characters. So I started with Resand because I had the best idea of what he could do as a magic character. And I'm honestly kind of proud of this. I ran this by my husband, so, like, to make sure that it's at least somewhat balanced. But I wanted to keep in mind Rizan's mind reading and his self-sacrificial nature and his stealing of unnecessary and his unnecessary stealing. So the first thing I wanted to give Resand was vigilance. That way you don't have to tap him in order to use him, or in order to like have him attack. And that feels like something that Resand would have as a mind reader and as a High Lord. He's a legendary creature because again he's a High Lord. Well, I'm also giving legendary creature status to anyone who is a main character or is part of the story. He can also look at the top card of his library at any time, or at least the player can look at the top card of the library from which Resand came from. Because again, like, he is a mind reader, so I feel like he would be I think the word for this is scrying, but you're not picking up the card, like, or either way, the mind reading thing, I feel like it works for Resand here, and the way that I represented that was just looking at the top card. At the beginning of his upkeep, this card needs the player would need to pay. Wow, the player would need to pay 3 life, and that would mean that any deck with Resand High Lord of Night in it would need to have some kind of lifelink, which again feels like something that Resand would have. Either that, or this card would be part of a deck that uses like, if the player loses, if like the player of this card loses life, then other cards would be able to take advantage of that. And then at the beginning of the end step, Resand would, like, this card would allow the player to pick a target and reveal their hand, and then copy an artifact or enchantment card without paying its mana cost. Which makes sense because Resand is a character who has definitely stolen an artifact or two from other people. But I could also see really clever ways of using this ability. Where, let's say you're kind of mana starved and you don't have any lands to tap. You could pick yourself, because that's a target player, and then you reveal your hand to the other players, and then you pull out like your highest costing artifact or enchantment, and then throw that down on the battlefield without paying its mana cost. That would be pretty wild, actually. And the weird part, I think, for me is that as a person who has to read about this character, he sucks and I hate him. But as a Magic player, or as Resand in different contexts, like, I'm here for him. He's great. And honestly, if there's a card out there that works like this card, let me know about it. My mill deck needs it. Anyway, this was super fun to make. I have a couple more, like, in the back, but this was just for my amusement, and if you want to see more of these, I will absolutely make them, but I might also just make them, like, for my own personal edification. Alright, so the next character that I'm making a magic card for is Cassian. I just wanted to put to put this art up here first because I think it's beautiful. It's so evocative. Like, can we have more of this Cassian and Nesta and not whatever the hell we got in House of Flame and Shadow? Anyway, to make Cassian a magic card, I wanted to emphasize his status as, like, the brute force guy and, like, the general guy. So this would be a card that leads other cards, like tokens or anything, into battle with him. And so that is what I've made. So first, I want to address the mana situation. I have it would be two like whatever mana, and then a red one because this is Cassian with the red siphons, and also like he's got a lot of like haste and a lot of like attack, like the tokens would attack with him. That feels like a very red thing. And then I also wanted either black because of the Night Court or green because of the proliferating tokens and the counter the counter generating that this card would do. I would have made him just red and black, but the way that Cassian is as a character, and also just the mechanics of Magic, I feel like there needed to be at least one green mana in there. So when it comes to like card keywords, he's Illyrian. Of course he's got flying, and he also, I wanted him to have menace because I wanted to make him harder to block. So menace just means you would need two creatures to block him, and then from there he just has a lot of different abilities that you'd have to tap for mana for, which makes sense considering that Cassian is a character whose abilities and his magic is all stuffed up in his siphons. So this would kind of be like he's tapping his siphons to use his abilities. And because you don't gotta tap him, I think you could use all three abilities at once if you had enough mana to do it. So first, he has the ability to add counters to himself. The next thing is that he has the ability to make red Illyrian tokens with flying and haste, which means that whenever Cassian attacks, the Illyrians could also attack on the first turn, but the Illyrians could attack other players, but they have to attack when he does. And that would be the ability that you would tap a red and a green for. The ability that you would tap one, a red, and a black for would be he gets to pick a creature that takes -1/-1, and when he attacks, he would be able to heal the player that is using him. So I personally would like to see a card like this be used in like a token deck or something where you would be sacrificing creatures to make things happen. Like if you had there's an artifact that lets you do that, but I don't remember what it is. And also, I feel like, unlike the Resand card, which I feel like could be used as a commander, this card, like, I feel like this would be a good assist to the commander, but not a commander in of itself, which makes sense for Cassian because Cassian defers to Resand and everything, and that's why we're side-eyeing the shit out of him right now. Anyway, I hope this was fun, and again, if there is a card that works like this, I want to know about it.
Okay, so the next Magic the Gathering card I'm doing is Azrael. And I know, like, Elaine and Lucian are in this fan art, but, like, oh my god, look at this fan art! So this is the card that I made for Azrael, and I just realized that every creature has, like, a species type, and I forgot to put the species type for any of these. So if I make any more, I'm going to make sure that it says legendary creature plus like the race that they are. Rizand would have been like a High Lord, and Cassian and Azrael are both going to be like Illyrians. But anyway, Azrael has a different kind of mana requirement because of the way that his card works. He is getting blue because of blue siphons and black because of Night Court. And then the X is the more mana that you spend on him, the more experience counters you're going to get. And I am a big experience counter girly because my first commander that I just truly loved using and that I still use to this day is Azuri Claw of Progress. So because Azrael is my favorite Illyrian, I wanted to give him something that kind of uses the same elements as the commanders that I use. Additionally, he's also getting some attributes of one of my favorite artifacts, which is the Orochi Hatchery. And that's specifically for the shadows that he's going to have around him at all times. So for his like general card abilities, he's getting Vigilance and he's getting Shroud. So like Resand, there's a level of awareness that Azrael has. It's not mind reading, but I still think that the shadows being able to see things that the normal Fae or human eyes cannot, that would allow for Vigilance. And Shroud, he's getting Shroud instead of Hexproof because Hexproof doesn't speak to shadows in the same way that Shroud does. So with the X amount of mana, he's entering the battlefield with X experience counters on it, where X equals mana used to cast the spell. And then from there, he, like Cassian, he's got some mana abilities. So first, he needs the ability to spy on things. So he is going to be able to scry with 2 mana, including 1 blue. And then with every time he does that, he's going to add an experience counter on what he already has. So if you're going to be using this card, even though this card doesn't exist, if you're going to be using this card, you're going to want some dice. And then he's going to have a major, like a bigger ability where it's 4 mana plus a blue and a black, where he's going to get X01 black shadow tokens, where X is the amount of experience counters on this creature. And then when you use like this ability, what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to essentially use him to make a bunch of little itty bitty teeny tiny shadow creatures, which you could then use for whatever you want. As an example, you could crack him for his third ability, which is 2 mana and a black, and then you sacrifice one of your shadows, and then you draw a card, which would be kind of like you send your shadow out to, like he sends the shadows out to like find stuff out, and then they'll come back with intel. And there's different magic cards that allow you to use like the tokens that you generate as, you know, mana dorks or whatever. Or you can just use them as blockers, because Asriel has had a few scenes where if he's feeling like uncomfortable or whatever, he'll just surround himself with shadows, you know? So I have a commander that works with experience counters, and then like his big like mana tapping ability kind of works like the Orochi Hatchery. But if there's a card, like a real card that works specifically using like experience counters and like generating tokens in this way, I kind of want to know about it. And there's also just a lot of different cards that when you sacrifice a creature for any reason, you get stuff out of it. So there's just a lot of different utility for this. So like the Illyrian boys are all done, and I'm not really sure which character to continue this with. So any suggestions would be lovely.
Okay, I apologize in advance because my voice sounds crazy right now. But the next person to get a magic card is going to be a character who deserves so much more than the narrative is giving her. Even though she's kind of that girl right now, she deserves even more than that. And so more is what I have given her. Okay, so the thing that I wanted to emphasize with Nesta's card is, one, she is a character whose power set as of now is defined by the artifacts and the magical items that she has command over. So as I was thinking about how to make this character, I thought that the best mechanic that Nesta could use when it comes to Magic the Gathering is she would just be a Voltron creature. She would be a creature that benefits the most from having artifacts equipped to her. That being said, though, the artifacts are much older than she is, so we also needed the element of she needs to go out and find the artifacts, which is what I believe I have done here. So first, she just costs 9 colorless mana. She doesn't have like, she's basically like Eldrazi. That's the closest thing I can get, I think, clan-wise when it comes to Magic. She's basically Eldrazi. And she is that expensive because of how she works. Because I think even seeing Voltron decks just out in the world, this is kind of overpowered, which makes sense because Nesta is kind of overpowered. So what you would need to do to use Nesta's card well is you would need to have a lot of equipable artifacts on the field that are unequipped. So that way she would cost less to cast. And then from there, you can start attaching everything to her. And that would be very, very reminiscent of her journey in ACOTAR, where she would be going out into the world and finding the artifacts that are part of the trove. And while Nesta is powerful on her own, like she's a 4/2, like Cassian is, so she would pack a punch going in. But then from there, she would also have all the effects that would be added to her from the equipable artifacts that would then be equipped onto her. And then at the beginning of every upkeep, she would gain a permanent +1/+1 for every artifact equipped to her. She doesn't have any abilities that you would have to tap for mana for because she doesn't need them. She would have all these freaking artifacts on her. And I don't personally play a Voltron deck, but honestly, if I saw something like this out in the field, this would terrify me as a player. I think this would also add a challenge to the player using this card, because you would need to have all of those artifacts on the field unequipped, and you would need ways to protect them, which I think from there, like, the player would, like, the battlefield would essentially be Prithian. And I feel like that could be a really cool concept for a Voltron deck, where you set the stage with all of the artifacts that this card would need to then find, which would be represented by paying the mana to equip the stuff to her. Honestly, I know this is a fake card, but how do you make these fake cards real? Because I want to see this one more than anything in action. I know a lot of Voltron deck players who would get a kick out of this.
Yay, people like these. Anyway, I have another card done, and we are doing Feyre this time. And the thing that I wanted to emphasize with Feyre is specifically, well, actually not specifically, because Feyre has access to every High Lord type of magic. She has access to basically every power set. So I wanted a card that would illustrate that by using every flavor of magic that a Magic the Gathering card could possibly have, which is why her card basically does everything. So first I wanted to address the constant states of Feyre's card, where she has vigilance because she is a mind reader like Rhysand, and she is a changeling because she has access to all the different High Lord magic. And when she goes to steal a Book of Breathings, the Book of Breathings and like the security system around the Book of Breathings recognizes her as Tarquin. So that gives changeling vibes. So now Feyre is every creature type. She is summoned by one colorless and one of each colored mana, because every single type of mana must be there to summon her. And then when you use those 6 mana to summon her, you can use one of those 6 mana to make her do something different. For example, if you tap a red, she would get first strike. I was thinking about double strike here, but I thought that would be like too much. Like, I still want these cards to be balanced, and like if it shows up on the table, like the other players don't immediately flip the table, you know? But I figured first strike was more than fair in this scenario. For those who are here for the ACOTAR content and not the Magic content, who don't know what first strike is, in this sense, it's when 2 cards come up against each other, this card will always hit first. At least when you tap a red to do it. Next is white, and white gave her flying. This could have been lifelink, but I feel like lifelink is associated with, in my mind, is associated with white, with green, with black. But when I think about flyers is associated with everybody. But when I think of flyers, I think of like the angel characters in Magic. So that's why white, I gave her flying. And I also felt like, because Feyre has those very offensive Illyrian wings, that probably offend everybody in her, every woman in Illyria, I felt like she needed flying because we spent so much time with her learning how to fly in A Court of Wings and Ruin. Next is green, and green I gave her trample. Trample feels like a very green thing to have. This could have also been red, and then green could have been reach in a pinch or something, but I liked trample for her better here. Blue, that is definitely an edit. I wanted her to have Oracle, but I did all this research into Oracle, and then when I sat down to make this video the first time, I couldn't remember what Oracle did. So, but then I really sat down and thought about it, and I thought that Hexproof would be better for the blue mana anyway, because I think because this card does so many different things, she would also, like, you would need the ability to ward off like the odd and end instant or sorcery that someone might throw your way in the event that something happens. Speaking of which, I know it says favorite archer on High Lady may pick one ability per turn. I'm not. The reason why I worded it this way is because I wasn't sure if it would be unfair, to make it something like favorite archer on High Lady may pick one ability per your turn and every opponent's turn, so that she's constantly changing, so that the other players aren't going to immediately know how to deal with this card. But that felt kind of broken. So I think people who play Magic are maybe tell me if that would have been too much. And black is pretty straightforward. I gave her Death Touch, and which I feel like would be a good thing to have in a pinch. And then colorless, she has the ability to give herself a +1/+1 counter, which combined with any kind of like equipable artifact or other creatures that would then put counters on this creature, I think this particular card could become a menace. Anyway, if this card is unfair and the modifications that I made to it are unfair, I would like to know about it, and I would like to refine this a little bit, because this does seem like a really cool idea, and I haven't seen any card in Magic in my years of playing that works like this before. It is time for my favorite Archeron sister to get the Magic card that will represent the different sides of her. So what I wanted for Elaine's card was something that spoke to every aspect of her power set and her personality, which I believe I have done here. So first, she's a maid being, and I feel like I haven't mentioned this before. She and the other two Archeron sisters are all artifact creatures because they're all maid. I guess we could have done legendary creatures here, but it would make sense that Elaine and Feyre and Nesta are all maid beings. Therefore, they all have affinity to maid objects and magical artifacts. It would make sense that they're all artifact creatures. She is summoned by three mana of any color: a blue, a green, and a black. Blue because I feel like she has scrying qualities and seeing qualities because she is a seer. It would make sense that she would be blue because that's something that's a very blue thing, like scrying and all that stuff. Green, that's mostly there because of the flowers, like her flower affinity and her gardening, and I feel like that would be that just makes sense for her to have. And then black, she's getting black because she is Night Court. She is Night Court specifically because she herself says, I am Elaine Archeron, I belong to the Night Court. Therefore, she gets to have a black mana because she is part of the Night Court. We're going to listen to her. So when it comes to her, like her permanent state, she doesn't have like vigilance or changeling or anything like that. But you are allowed to look at the top card of your library at any time, because she's not a mind reader, but she still needs to be able to see into the future. And that's the best way I could think of, where you could look at the next card that you're going to draw. And then that would help with her blue mode, which is 1 and a blue. That is her rot mode. She draws a card, and then your opponents would mill a card and lose a life. And that would be, that could be really interesting, because you could, if you had enough mana, you could really hit somebody with that. And like, if, let's say you're running out of cards, you can just tap like 6 mana, including 3 blues, and kind of chip everybody down that way. And then that would be, she's basically rotting everybody. And I like that for her. And then next is going to be 1 and a green. That is bloom mode. She gains 2 experience counters and lifelink until the end of turn. So if she's going to, like attack, she can attack somebody, and then the player can gain life according to how much is on her at the moment. And then next is her bones mode, which is 1 and a black, so she gains a 1/1 counter for every experience counter that she gets, and death touch till the end of turn. So basically she would just be gardening and gardening and gardening and gardening and gaining life a little bit and gaining life a little bit and gaining life a little bit, and then she can just you could just tap the 1 in the black, and the next thing you know, she's killing you and killing your creatures. And I wanted to make sure that you could do any one of these at any time. Unlike Feyre, who her card, you can only tap 1 of her abilities at any point. For her, because Elaine is rot and bloom and bones, and she is all of these conflicting things together, she can do any of these conflicting things together.
I love Elaine so much. And I feel like this is a really cool card that would speak to her personality. And I'm going to be real, I play almost exclusively blue and green and black. So yeah, I'm that person. I don't know if there's a card out there that works like this, but again, if there is a card that works like this, I really want to know about it. I am inclined to agree and to continue the Magic the Gathering card thing. I thought I wouldn't do a character this time. I thought I would do an artifact that would work well for the way that Elaine's character is set up to work. Or at least her card is set to work. Here's her card to make everybody as a recap. And this is the artifact. And I love it. I really, really want to play this. Like, for myself. I want this in my own deck. So Truth Teller costs a lot. It's 8 and either a blue or a black. Blue because it's associated with Azrael, and black because it is a night court thing, and it is or like a dusk court thing. Like it has a lot of shadows and stuff around it. It feels like blue and black is the right place for this to be. It would also synergize super well with the Azrael card that I made because it is also blue and black. And it also has the same mechanics and tokens that Truth Teller, the artifact, would be asking for. So Truth Teller, it comes in with Flash because I feel like that works because of Azrael's shadows and the way that Elaine was able to step out of them without warning and then stab the King of Highburn in the neck. The equipped creature gets +2/+3. That way it's more power and more toughness than it is power, because Truth Teller doesn't seem like Azrael's main weapon. Like, I feel like this is just something that he has in his possession in the moment where he needs it. When it comes to mana, it costs 1 less to cast for every experience counter that your creatures have. So let's say you have Azrael and Elaine, those cards on the field, Truth Teller would cost that much less. And then from there, when you equip it, it costs 5 to equip, because if you have Azrael and Elaine with a bunch of counters on it, for the effects that Truth Teller is giving you, you do need to pay the price somewhere, so the equip cost is pretty high. And when it is equipped, the creature gets indestructible and death touch, meaning that the creature cannot be touched, like, at all. If a creature touches if a creature touches the creature that this is equipped to, the creature dies. If a player is trying to board wipe and remove it, creature's not going anywhere either. I like this particular setup for the Truth Teller artifact, specifically because of the way that it would work with Azrael, because then Truth Teller would make the Azrael card indestructible and have death touch, and then it would be making a bunch of little baby shadows forever, basically. But then it would also work with Elaine, because then Elaine is that card. It would be milling you and constantly gaining experience counters, and then hitting for death. It would also be hitting for death touch, which would be kind of a repeat. But Truth Teller isn't necessarily supposed to be a 1-to-1. It works with Elaine. It's supposed to work mostly with Azrael, but then Elaine gets some benefits. Yes, I'm making magic cards and I'm still on my Elriel bullshit. Anyway, this was super fun to make. I'm in the middle of making other artifacts, so if y'all want to see them, let me know. And if there is a card that works like this, I would also like to know about it. This is a huge, ginormous oopsie on my part. I have only played one card at a time that uses experience counters, so I didn't know that the experience counters go on the player and not the creature. So I would amend this by saying for every experience counter that the player has, or like the owner has, you know? Other than that, I feel like it works. It's just me being a dumbass who didn't quite realize how experience counters worked in that moment. That being said, I came up with an idea for another artifact, which isn't quite in the ACOTAR universe, but I thought it would be fun to have a card like this, especially because I don't think I've seen a card like this before. And I actually did run this one by my husband just to make sure that I got it correct. And here is said artifact. This is specifically the horn, like the Dread Trove horn. So the way that the horn works is that it allows you to go to other universes, other dimensions, that kind of thing. So I thought that the horn would specifically work in like an ACOTAR Magic the Gathering card collection, like it would need to travel around everybody else's battlefields before arriving back home. So let's say you, like, the way that this would work is that like you yourself would be like Prithian, and then you would take this, like this artifact, and you would equip it with 2. This costs 5, by the way. And you would equip it to like a creature, and then the creature would gain like a little less power and toughness, and it can't attack or block. And then once your turn ends, it would go to the next player's battlefield, and that player can't attack or block with it or anything. This thing is just hanging out on the battlefield, and then it would interact with whatever creatures that have whatever things on that player's battlefield without it being able to attack anybody. And then it would make its way around the table, like let's say like Commander, you have like 4 players at a table. It would go like to the player to the left of you, and the player to the left of them, and the player to the left of them, until it ended up back with you. And then when you got it back, you sacrifice the horn. I wasn't able to make a transforming card here. This would have been a transforming card. I don't know if there is like a thing to make transforming cards like this way. But if you get it back with the creature intact, you get to sacrifice the horn and then or transform the horn, and then from there you get to play Bryce. I'm not sure if I should be treating Bryce like a planeswalker, considering Bryce is not from the ACOTAR world. Therefore, if she's coming in as her own separate entity, so therefore she would be a planeswalker. Or because the Sarah J. Maas universes are all connected now, it would make sense that she's a creature because she's not like a god or anything. And I feel like this could be pretty interesting because even though like your opponents can't attack or block with it or anything, they could still like sacrifice the creature for like whatever end that they have, and then the horn would have to come back to you, and then you have to try again with a different creature. I also thought this would be an interesting way to deal with like the dimension hopping like aspect of the horn. And then by the time it gets back to you, you get something like really, really cool. But while you're waiting for it to come back to you, you're kind of stressed out because you're like, what's going to happen to that creature before it gets back to me? I'm also not sure if the way that this is worded, that you would need to find Bryce in your deck and then like pull her out of your library and then shuffle your library, or if she would need to be in your hand at that point. I think if she needed to be in your hand, I think that's kind of difficult. So I think what I would do to edit this card, if like in the ability that like somebody wants to see more of this card, I would make it so you can pull Bryce Quinlan out of your library, and then from there I play her without paying your mana cost. But then I think Bryce would also have her own mana cost. Like I don't think she's free. Like whatever she is, she's gonna fuck up your battlefield. Anyway, I hope you liked my take on the horn Magic the Gathering style, and if there is a card that makes a creature go around the battlefield before coming back to you and giving you something good, I kind of want to know about it.